talking about empathy. Empathy is understanding. Can I start? Yeah. Empathy is understanding assumptions, beliefs, and or a worldview. It's not the same thing as sympathy. It's not the same thing as pity. We need to differentiate that. Empathy requires understanding another person's subjective experience while maintaining the capacity to differentiate from that person. In other words, if you sympathize with another individual, that means that you have taken on their problems, that you are feeling their problems. Empathy means you understand their problems, but you don't take them on yourself. And that's why empathy is better than sympathy. Pity is where you feel sorry for the other individual. And that is not a good thing, feeling sorry for the other individual, because you put them in a position of subordination to your ideas. So pity's not a good thing for for a counselor of one ilk or another. What you need is empathy. You need to understand their feelings, but not feel them yourself. If you feel them yourself, then that's sympathy. If you feel sorry for the individual, therefore making them a subordinate, or making them lesser than they actually are, not recognizing their strengths, and that's what pity is. So as a psychologist, we need to feel empathy. Respect or unconditional positive regard is expressed by affirming and appreciating clients without condoning their harmful behaviors. Oh, you need this. It's coming. It's coming. Here, I'll give it to you. You can start it over in the corner. And then it can come and make its way around to the rest of the people. We'll see if that works. Respect or unconditional positive regard is expressed by affirming and appreciating clients without condoning their harmful behaviors. When I was working up north on the Fort Belknap Reservation, one of the problems that they had up there was that, let me see, how can I explain this? One of the problems they had up there was that parents they let their kids run wild. It was really kind of odd. The children that turned out the best were the ones that were raised by their grandparents, as odd as that sounds. So part of the problem was they weren't making any rules for their children, and they felt like that was part of their tradition. It was their tradition. Their tradition told them not to put any strictures on their children. Grandparents could, but parents couldn't. So the kids kind of ran wild. So if they were being raised by their parents, and their parents believed that that was part of their tradition, then they didn't actually take care of their children. Why am I talking about this? Condoning their harmful behavior. So this was a problem. This was a really serious problem. So I had a very difficult time dealing with individuals who really weren't being taken care of by their families, by their parents. And as long as there was a grandparent in the picture, the grandparent would take care of the children. So what we saw a lot was children that were being given to their grandparents because the parents wouldn't do anything with them. And then when those parents became grandparents, then all of a sudden they got a backbone. They started controlling the children, as odd as that seems. He's moved. He's changed positions. Whenever you're dealing with a client, you need to look for the good in your client. You need to regard their thoughts, feelings, and abilities. You need to see them for who they are. You need to notice, acknowledge, and highlight your client's strengths, their capabilities, their resilience, their coping ability, their potential, and their resources. So you need to not only recognize it, but you also need to tell them that you recognize it, that these are your strengths, and this is what I see in you. So you have the ability to be successful. Being polite and following appropriate cultural norms. Of course, that's not always the easiest thing in the world, because some individuals adhere to their culture very strictly. Other individuals don't, and of course you're going to have to gauge that from your first or second meeting. You're going to have to gauge just how traditional or how cultural this select individual is. How much they represent their own culture. Genuineness, this is something that you need. You need to be genuine. You need to be sincere. You need to be authentic. You need to be real and allow your humanness and your uniqueness to be seen. You need to be natural, honest, and forthright. And of course, unlike our president, you need to admit your mistakes. If you make a mistake, just go, I screwed up. Okay, not the easiest thing in the world, especially if you're, going to how important people are, or unimportant people are. Offering advice, it is inappropriate to offer advice until you have fully understood the people involved, their challenges and situation, and collaborated with the clients on setting your goals. This is a very common mistake. People will want to give other individuals advice. You need to hold on to your advice until either they ask for it or until you've had several counseling sessions whereby you understand exactly who this person is and what their problem is. Offering advice before you know what the clients have already tried can be experienced as not respecting their strengths and capacities. This is a trick that they will use. This is a trick that clients will use. They won't give you all the information. It's really cool. They'll hold things back. You think I'm kidding? They'll hold things back, trying to find out if you can niggle it out of them, I guess, or winkle it out of them. I don't know what you're trying to do. Anyway, they'll hold things back, and they won't tell you what they did, like it's a big secret. Oh yeah, I've already tried that. That kind of stuff. And you could have months worth of counseling sessions, and they'll never talk about this. And so you give them an idea. Well, maybe if you tried this, and they go, oh, I tried that. That's the first thing I tried. It's always the first thing I tried. Anyway, clients are tricky. Sometimes it's a game. They see it as a game. They will see it as you have to guess who they are. Guess what my problem is. 20 questions. Oh, man. And sometimes no matter what you say, it will always be wrong. Not because it's wrong, but because they tell you it's wrong. They don't want you to be right. I know, sounds like a song, doesn't it? Anyway, and you'll have different types of clients. Some clients are just coming in because they need somebody to talk to. They need a friend. Okay, they're not really they're not really trying to change. They have to come up with something so that you can help them, as confusing as that is. Another common mistake is reassuring your client. And of course, the reason you do this is because you're trying to get them away from a crisis. You're trying to reduce their pain. But of course, reassuring them sometimes plays right into their hands. Because if you reassure them, a lot of times you're saying, I'm going to help you take care of this problem. That's what you're saying, but what they're hearing is, don't worry, I'll take care of this problem for you. Just like their mother used to do, and just like their father used to do. Does that make sense? They're looking for a mommy or a daddy to take care of the problem. Okay. But that's not your job. Your job's not to become their new mother. Your job is to become is to help them get over their problem. There's only one person that can solve their problem. Only one person, and that's them, of course. They have to solve their own problem. Your job is to get them closer and closer to the solution, whatever that may happen to be. So the reality is, as a counselor, you will never fix anybody. They will have to fix themselves. And sometimes they recognize this and they don't think that you did anything. That you weren't worth the money that they paid to get the help. So you try to reassure them in an attempt to reduce their pain. The pain clients feel about their problem can motivate them to solve the problem. So the pain is a good thing. The pain is what is going to make them change. So they need to feel the pain. And that's okay. This is what's going to drive them to make the next move. Negating the importance of the client's pain can lead them to feel that they are not fully understood or respected. And of course, if you don't really, you need to tell them that you understand what they're going through. And you need to talk about their pain. They need to talk about their pain. They especially need to talk about their pain. But if you try to reassure them, of course, you're negating that pain. And sometimes they will read that as you not really understanding what's going on. For example, telling someone it will all work out in the end, there's really no reason for you to say that. Especially if they don't want to be fixed. A lot of people don't want to be fixed. Alcoholics don't want to stop. They want to keep drinking. So if they come in, if the court has ordered them to come in, they are the hardest people to deal with because they don't really want to change. Okay, so if you tell them everything's going to be okay in the end, it's not going to be okay in the end. It's the last thing that's going to happen. Don't worry about it indicates a capacity to stop worrying on command, and of course, you can't do that. Nobody does that. And these are all common phrases. I use these phrases all the time. I talked to my son this past weekend, and of course, that's all I said during my whole conversation is, it'll work out in the end, and don't worry about it. No, we were talking about politics, so my son is so negative. He's sure that the United States is going to hell in a handbasket. And he knows whose fault it is. I think it's mine, I'm not sure. Offering excuses, this is another common mistake. It helps, if you offer excuses, of course, the client may not set goals for themselves. Asking leading questions. You should never ask a question that gives advice to the client. Remember, we're not giving them advice. That's not a good idea. Dominating through teaching. Teaching is dominating or pushy. It can suggest one right way. My second wife, one way. She was a born-again Christian. There's only one way to heaven. We never could figure that one. And evidently it's that. It's pointing upward or something. They would have a meeting, yeah, they'd go like this. You know, it's like giving everybody the finger or something. Communicating in a dominating way tends to invite people to feel shamed or rebellious and to withdraw or become defensive and argue. So if you try to tell the individual what to do, of course, they'll just rebel against you. It also implies that there is only one way to resolve an issue, and of course there's tons of different ways, usually, to resolve an issue. Labeling is a sophisticated way to judge, criticize, or blame another person, and it's not helpful. So if you label them, label the problem, then potentially all you're doing is truncating the possibility that they will be able to deal with the problem. Interrogating, asking why questions are particularly problematic because they sometimes imply judgment and they also invite defensiveness. You certainly don't want your client to be defensive. Developing your ability to be empathic, how do you do that? Empathy is extremely important, as we said, no sympathy, no pity. What we need to do is be empathic. We need to understand the client, but at the same time not take on their problems. So how do you do that? How do you find out about a client? How do you find out about what's going on with your client? Well, one way to do that is to read novels. You can read professional literature, but it usually doesn't have to do with personalities. It usually doesn't have a lot to do with culture. They don't really teach you culture. If you read a journal article, they're not going to explain what the culture is all about. But if you read novels, a lot of times you get into personalities, you get into actual culture. I read a series of books when I knew I was coming down here, when I got hired. One of the books was the one that Wilson teaches out of Dene. It's like 350 pages. Yeah, it's got history, it's got all kinds of stuff in it. But I didn't learn nearly as much from that book about the Navajo reservation. The books that I learned the most out of were Tony Hillerman mystery books about, yeah, I know. People go, yeah, that's not real, that guy's white. And he's from Albuquerque, what does he know about Navajo? But it's really kind of interesting. They talk about the culture, they talk about taboos and whatnot. And of course you didn't read any of that in Diné. It wasn't there. They didn't explain personalities at all. Now, it may be inaccurate, it may be relatively inaccurate, but at least it's talking about personalities. I was thinking about this on the way over here. I read a bunch of books, and the ones that taught me the most were the Tony Hillerman books, strangely enough. So reading a novel is not a bad idea, reading a novel about the area. It gives you an understanding, but of course it gives you an understanding about that select individual or this group of people. At the same time, of course, you can't take anything as the gospel as far as an area is concerned. So reading novels is not a bad idea to get a good background. Joining in activities, talking to and getting to know others who have different experiences, people that have been on the Navajo reservation, ask them what their experiences were. Somebody may have had a bad experience, somebody may have had a great experience. I hate to talk to the people that everything was just rosy, which means they probably didn't really interact with anybody. Nothing ever goes that well, okay? Anyway, so you need to talk to people about their experiences. Attending classes or workshops focused on specific groups of people. Traveling to different countries and spending time with local residents teaches you how to interact with people that aren't like you. So if you've only been on the Navajo reservation, you need to go to Albuquerque. You need to go to Phoenix. You need to go to Flagstaff. Don't go to Gallup. Don't go to Gallup. It's kind of a dangerous place. Doing volunteer work in communities or neighborhoods very different from your own. And of course that teaches you how some people are different than you. Watching popular movies about people who are different from you. You know, my wife complains that I watch too many movies, but I watch a lot of movies. And I learned a lot from those movies. You learn things. Just because you watch a movie about Beverly Hills doesn't mean that is true about Beverly Hills. That's always true about Beverly Hills. It's just one little piece of information. So you need to put all this stuff together. If you were going to start counseling African Americans, are there movies that you could watch to understand who these people are? Is that a possibility? Or would you have to watch a series of movies? Or not watch any movies at all? By God, you don't care about them. Examples. Let me give you examples. This is a movie called Real Women Have Curves. It's about a second generation Mexican American girl. So if you needed to find out about Mexican Americans, potentially you could watch this movie and get at least some information about Mexican Americans. Hoop Dreams is a movie about Chicago, about basketball players in Chicago. Inner city African American boy, and it's actually about two, and one of them was successful and the other one wasn't successful, if I remember correctly. Mystic River, I saw this movie and I didn't, I guess I missed the punchline. Maybe I fell asleep somewhere in the movie. It's about an inner city white boy who is sexually abused. Mystic River is in Boston, is a suburb outside of Boston. So it's about Massachusetts. Girl Interrupted, you may have seen this movie. It's actually the first movie made by Angelina Jolie. It's about two individuals in a not an insane asylum, that's not really the right word. They're actually being treated for their mental illness. One of them commits suicide, I can't remember which one. Oh no, I gave you, sorry. One of them kills themselves. I don't remember. Does anybody see the movie? Nobody's seen the movie?
I did, but
Which one? Didn't somebody kill themselves?
yeah.
Which? I think Winona Ryder's a star. Yeah, I think Angelina Jolie's the one that kills herself. American History X is about a young white boy who joins a neo-Nazi group, shaves his head. Has anybody seen this movie? Oh, come on, don't you want to know about neo-Nazis? This is one of my favorite movies only because I like soccer. It's about a second-generation Indian girl living in London. She is a Sikh, or a Sheik as they actually pronounce it. It's called Bend It Like Beckham. It is Keira Knightley's first starring role. Keira Knightley? No? Okay, not important. I like the movie because it's about soccer, so it's kind of a fun movie. What does it teach you about people from India? It's really kind of an interesting movie because she's a really good soccer player, but her parents want her to go to medical school in England, and she wants to play soccer, and her parents think that's a waste of time, her Indian parents. And the entire community doesn't understand her. The entire Indian community, or Sikh community, or Sheik community. So how do you insult somebody who's from India in England? What do they, do you guys have any idea how they insult them? It's something good to know. A name you can't call somebody? They call them Pakis. Paki is an insult because it means they're from Pakistan. Of course, they're Indian. And Indians are Hindu. Most Indians are Hindu. Some of them are Muslim, but people from Pakistan are Muslim. Anyway. Nothing, huh? Okay. I Am Sam is a movie about people with developmental disabilities. It has Sean Penn. We're going to see Sean Penn in a lot of these strange movies. Oddly enough, he was in Mystic River. He's the person that was abused in Mystic River. Radio is about a person with a developmental disability. It's actually a true story. It's really kind of neat. They start picking on him. He has a developmental problem. He's an African American gentleman. The team is primarily white. So they not only pick on him because he's black, but they also pick on him because he has a disability. The coach decides that they need to learn not to do that. So he punishes them for picking on the guy, and then he becomes a mascot. Not a mascot. That's not the right word. He becomes somebody that's really important to the team. Mexican American family living in LA. My family. 3 Generations of Dreams. It's about Mexican Americans in Los Angeles. What's Eating Gilbert Grape? One of Johnny Depp's first starring roles. It's about a white rural family dealing with issues related to poverty, autism, obesity, depression, and suicide. What's Eating Gilbert Grape? It's on television from time to time if you have that type of television. Soul Food. It's about an African American family dealing with serious illness and death. Really kind of a fascinating movie. It has Vanessa Williams in it. That's Vanessa Williams right there. Vivica Fox is in it. That's Vivica, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, it's about an African American family. Sleeping with the Enemy. Has anybody seen this movie? How could you not see this movie?
I have it, but I haven't watched it.
You haven't watched it?
Well, now maybe I'll watch it.
Yeah. It's got Julia Roberts in it. She's an abused spouse. And it is her mechanism for breaking away from her husband. Kind of an interesting movie. Anyway, it's about a woman struggling with physical abuse. Tina is about Tina Turner and Ike and Tina Turner. Tina evidently was severely abused. I remember Ike and Tina Turner when they first came on the scene because they were so dynamic. Ike was in the background playing the music and Tina was in the front singing and dancing and she was such an iconic figure as compared to Ike, who was always in the background, and kind of an ugly guy back there playing bass, not playing, okay, he was playing the bass. The Notebook, this is about people getting old. Yes, you need something?
Do you happen to have a key to the supply closet?
Sure.
Somebody stole the wiring from 502.
It's one of
Awesome.
these keys.
Thanks for remembering.
Sorry, Chuck. Sorry, people.
The Notebook. Has anybody seen The Notebook? Evidently, this makes people cry. I haven't seen it yet. My wife, every time she sees it, it comes on television. She has to watch it, and I refuse to watch it. I don't know. Maybe because my wife has to watch it, and I figured that one out yet. But it's about people getting old. Evidently, she's dying of Alzheimer's disease, and they keep having flashbacks about. You've seen the movie then? Okay. They keep having flashbacks about when they fell in love. And in the end, well, we won't say about what happens in the end. If you've never seen the movie, it'll make you cry. Evidently it does. It makes my wife cry every time she watches it. She's never nicer to me. Damn it, that's what I'm looking for. I'm hoping she'll watch a movie that'll make her nicer to me, but that hasn't happened yet. On Golden Pond is Henry Fonda's last movie. It's the only movie he made with his daughter Jane. It has Katharine Hepburn. It was Katharine Hepburn's one of her last movies, if not her last movie. Anyway, it's about two aging people. His memory's starting to fade. Evidently he was never really very nice to his daughter, which is actually true about Henry Fonda. Wasn't very nice. He wasn't a very loving person. He was more his characters, whatever character he was in the movie. So it was really kind of weird. On Golden Pond. Driving Miss Daisy, really old movie. Well, not that old, I guess. Jessica Tandy has died. Anyway, it's about there's a lot of layers to this movie. It's not only about two relatively old people, but it's also about a Southern white lady getting along with a black man. Really kind of fascinating. Turns out he can't read. Yeah, he's just looking at the pictures. He reads a newspaper every morning, but he can't really read. Or he looks at the newspaper every morning. Iris, I've never seen this movie. Evidently it's about older Jewish people in New York City. 28 Days is about a woman recovering from alcoholism. And just like a lot of alcoholics, she really doesn't want to recover. She's sent to rehab by the courts, and she fights it through the whole thing, through the whole 28 days. But in the end, she's relatively successful. Anyway, it's really a good movie, and she does a good job. I don't know that Sandra Bullock has ever been an alcoholic, but she really does a good job in this movie. Losing Isaiah is about Halle Berry is the alcoholic, and she has drug and alcohol problems. She loses her baby, and Jessica Lange is the one that adopts Isaiah. And in the end, so it's a fight between the two women for custody of this child. Two women love the child, and the question is what will happen in the end. I won't tell you what happens in the end. It's really kind of a fascinating movie. When a Man Loves a Woman, really strange movie. It's got Meg Ryan as the alcoholic. Andy Garcia is her husband, and as it turns out, the reason that he loves the alcoholic Meg Ryan, and he doesn't like the recovered Meg Ryan. And in the end, they have to resolve the differences between who she is when she's drunk and who she is when she's not drunk. She's a lot more fun when she's drunk, evidently. Yeah, okay. But there's a child involved, and because the child's involved, that changes the dynamic of everything. Gracie's Choice, I've never seen this movie. It's about women and drug and alcohol problems. Really kind of interesting. Let's go back. 28 Days is about women with drug and alcohol problems. Losing Isaiah is about women with drug and alcohol problems. When a Man Loves a Woman is about women with drug and alcohol problems. Gracie's Choice is about women with drug and alcohol problems. So where's the movies about men with drug and alcohol problems? Evidently that's boring because they don't make movies about men recovering from alcoholism, do they? It's more fun when it's Sandra Bullock, Meg Ryan, Halle Berry. Right? What about the men? Why aren't there any movies about men recovering from alcoholism? Come on, you guys understand Hollywood? What's going on here? Why aren't there any movies about men recovering from alcoholism? We want to see women recovering from alcoholism, but what's wrong with guys recovering from alcoholism? What's going on here? Are men that wimpy that they don't recover from alcoholism? Or maybe we don't care. That's a tragedy. We don't care. I don't know, we don't care. What's wrong with us? Really? We don't care? Did I just make that up? Do we really not care? Come on. Do we care? Do we care about men?
Of course.
No, we don't. So there's 4 movies about women recovering from alcoholism, drug and alcoholism. So where's the movies about men recovering from drug and alcoholism?
They all turn schizophrenic?
Can you think of any movie about men recovering from drug and alcoholism? I just gave you 4 examples of women recovering from drug and alcoholism. So are there any movies about men recovering? Or maybe men can't recover from drug and alcoholism. Maybe once they get hooked, they're done for good. Might as well flush them down the toilet. Did I say toilet? I'm sorry. What's going on here? This is our society. So where's the movies about men? Or do we not care about men? Do we not care about men? Aren't they important? They are? Maybe, yes. Are they important, Sharon? Come on. What do you mean? Travis, are they important? They are important. So why don't we make movies about men recovering from?
It's an uglier recovery than a woman.
Well, men are uglier than men. I'll agree with that. I mean, look at the women that they had in these movies. Meg Ryan, Sandra Bullock, wait a minute, Halle Berry, one of the most beautiful women that has ever existed, and here she's got a drug and alcohol problem. I can assure you she doesn't look bad in any of these movies. I mean, any of the scenes in the movie. So what's going on with the guys? We got to figure this out. Do men not recover from alcoholism? Don't they? Don't men recover from alcoholism just like women do? Well, I would hope so too. But do they? Is it less likely that a man's going to recover from alcoholism? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Okay. Well, let's not worry about alcoholism anymore. Let's worry about sexual orientation. Boys Don't Cry is about a transgender female, and in the end, she is murdered. I know. This happened I used to live in Nebraska, and this happened right down the road from where I used to live. This is a true story. They killed her. They beat her to death, and her girlfriend. Boys on the Side is about people dealing with issues related to discrimination and sexual orientation. I've seen the movie several times, and I can't remember who's the one that is. One of them is a lesbian, and one of them has HIV, and then the other one just gets pregnant, I think. Well, I don't remember. It's kind of a strange movie. Philadelphia is about, this is Tom Hanks' first Academy Award. He is a gay man suffering from HIV. This is back in the 1980s, before the United States agreed to start doing any research with AIDS. AIDS was this mysterious disease that was killing everybody. Fascinating. Brokeback Mountain, you may remember this movie when it came out. It was a blockbuster. Just the subject made people cringe. But a lot of people went to see it. It has Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger in the movie. Anyway, it's about two sheep herders, as it turns out. Cowboys who were herding sheep. Crying Game, this is one of the first movies about somebody that's transgender. This individual falls in love with this individual who he thinks is a woman, but she turns out to be a guy. And of course, in the end, well, anyway, it's really an involved story. He's an Irish terrorist. He's an Irish terrorist. Oh, okay. And he kills an Englishman who was dating this other lady, and he asks him to go and tell her that he died, something, or died a hero or whatever. And so he does, and then he falls in love with her. Then it turns out her ain't her, I guess. But she has a penis, so I think she's transgender. But it's the first movie about this. I mean, this is back in the late 70s, early 80s, so nobody was even talking about this stuff. And all of a sudden there's a movie about somebody that's transgender. I've never seen this movie. It's about people dealing with issues related to discrimination, sexual orientation. It's called Desert Hearts. I've never seen the movie. Longtime Companion, same topic. I've never seen that movie either. I don't even know who's in it. Oh, it's German. Huh, okay. Anyway. Milk is about Harvey Milk in San Francisco. He was one of the aldermen from San Francisco, and he, along with the mayor, were assassinated by an individual who lost their job. And the reason they shot Milk was because he was the first openly gay politician in San Francisco, and this guy was so appalled that he went in there with a gun and killed the mayor and killed Harvey Milk. As Good as It Gets, if you've seen this movie, it has Jack Nicholson in it. It's about a man with obsessive compulsive disorder. Really kind of fascinating. His obsessive compulsive disorder is fairly extensive, but for the love of a woman, he changes his behavior to some extent. If you've ever been around somebody with obsessive compulsive disorder, changing one little thing doesn't really change who they are. They're still obsessive compulsive and almost impossible to live with. Beautiful Mind is about Russell Crowe's first starring role. He's a white man with schizophrenia. He's also a mathematician. Brilliant mathematician. Children of a Lesser God is about a woman who is mute. And her college professor falls in love with her. And it gets real strange after that. Anyway, she can't hear. My Left Foot, Daniel Day-Lewis's first Academy Award. It's about a man who has cerebral palsy, so he doesn't move very well. But he's able to kick goals with his left foot. And so they put him out on the soccer field and then he's got this wicked left foot. The Green Mile is about, it's about a strange thing. Men in prison, not really. It's about a man that's about to be executed who can perform all these miracles. He brings people back to life. I mean, it's really kind of strange. Dead Men Walking is about a man about to be executed. And once again, it's Sean Penn that's about to be executed. Shawshank Redemption is on television like every third night. It's about a man breaking out of prison. The Saint of Fort Washington. I actually used to live in Fort Washington. It's right outside of Washington, D.C. It is about people who are homeless. The struggles of a single African American mother. What is this one? Oh, that's The Monsters Ball. Weird movie. Just a weird movie. Hence the name Monsters Ball. Heath Ledger's in it, and he commits suicide. Billy Bob Thornton's in it, and he gets the girl in the end. It really kind of odd. It's the ugliest man in the world in here. Yeah, no. He gets to marry Angelina Jolie. The Soloist is about a homeless guy who has schizophrenia, but he's a talented musician. The Joy Luck Club is about second-generation Asian American women. Eat, Drink, Man, Woman is about the challenges of a Taiwanese family. It's all actually in Chinese. America is about a divorced Palestinian woman and her son. Rhapsody in August is about is a Japanese movie. It's about a grandmother who lived through the bombing of Nagasaki. Stand and Deliver, you may have seen this movie. It's been on television a lot. It's about a teacher in a low-income Hispanic neighborhood who teaches mathematics. And he does it through tough love. And of course, fairly successful individual. Four Little Girls is about the challenges of African Americans that African Americans face. Do the Right Thing is one of Spike Lee's first movies. It's about the challenges that African Americans face. Ghost of Mississippi, about African Americans, the problems that African Americans have in select parts of the country. That one is in New York. That one is in Alabama. And of course, that one's in Mississippi. The Long Walk Home is about the challenges of African Americans face. This is really kind of an interesting story. It's about the bus boycott in Birmingham, Alabama. And of course, Whoopi Goldberg plays a domestic working for this lady, this white lady. In the end, of course, they talk and they talk about the problems. She starts driving her domestic person home because there are no buses running, and she wouldn't get on a bus anyway because they're boycotting the buses. The reason they boycotted the buses is because they were being forced to sit in the back. Okay. So she starts driving her home, and at one point they get stopped by a police barricade, and she gets out of the car and she joins the protest. And that's the long walk time. She actually walks home rather than drive her car because of the police. Strange movie, upper middle class Danish multi-generational family dealing with incest and violence. So if you want to find out about people from Denmark. Yesterday is about a rural African family where both the parents are dying from HIV. Tuesdays with Maury is about a man coming down with Lou Gehrig's disease. And that's Jack Lemmon is the individual coming down with Lou Gehrig's disease. Rain Man, it was an Academy Award-winning movie, had Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman plays an individual suffering from autism. And his autism is fairly severe. He has the ability to talk, which is at that time, it was relatively rare as far as autism was concerned. This is back in the 80s. Lars and the Real Girl, I'm not sure about what this movie's about. Evidently, he has some kind of a mental illness, and he's a white guy. Single white mother who has devoted her life to her 21-year-old son, Cyrus. And of course, Jonah Hill plays Cyrus, if I'm not mistaken. Marissa Tomei is the mother. The Diving Bell and the Butterfly is about a man who is in an automobile accident. He becomes mute and paralyzed, and he has to deal with it. Wonderful as that sounds. Pieces of April is about a white middle-class family. The oldest daughter is estranged from the family. The mother is ill and dying, and she has aging grandparents. And that is April. Whoops, I went the wrong direction. Precious, this one won an Academy Award for for Monique. I think that's Monique. Anyway, she was an African-American teenager living on welfare, pregnant as a result of incest. And I can't remember who impregnated her. Did anybody see the movie? Was it a father or a brother?
It was a dad.
It was her dad? Yeah. Pretty painful movie. Yeah. We love movies that make us cry. Namesake is about a first-generation Indian in the United States and how they handle it. City Island is a white, blue-collar family dealing with a grown son recently released from prison, and this is in the United States. As It Is in Heaven is a white Swedish community with issues related to impact of bullying on a child and domestic violence. If you know anything about Scandinavia, bullying is very common in elementary schools over there. It has something to do with their Viking traditions, I don't know. But this is a problem in Norway and Sweden. Bullying is a really, really serious problem over there. Winter's Bone is about a poor white Appalachian family, father missing and the mother is mentally ill. As much fun as that sounds. Goodnight, Mr. Tom is about a white British family, single, mentally ill mother, and they neglect and abuse their children. As much fun as that sounds. Children of Heaven is about a poor Iranian family struggling to manage in the United States, if I'm not mistaken. American Beauty, I have no idea why this is on here. This is really a strange movie. It has Kevin Spacey in it. It's a family facing a lot of challenges, but he becomes obsessed with his next door neighbor's teenage daughter. Oh my God. So it also has to do with male fantasies, I guess. Really strange movie. Lost in Translation, I don't know why this one's up here. Challenges faced by white adults.
Understanding culture.
Up in the Air, another challenges by white adults. It has George Clooney in it. Anyway, Meriden Airport. In the end, of course, it all turns out for the best. Life as a House is challenges of white adults. Again, I've never seen this movie. Another challenges of white adults. This is $1 Million Baby. Hilary Swank won a second Academy Award for this movie, and Clint Eastwood won for Best Director, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, it's about a female boxer. It has Morgan Freeman in it. I think Morgan Freeman, well, let's not go into that. I think he dies in the end. He's actually the star of the movie. Edward Scissorhands. Dumbest movie I've ever seen. I don't really understand what the challenges are. It's like a fantasy movie or something. Eternal Sunshine is about challenges of white people. Powwow Highway is about an American Indian adult seeking understanding on a road trip to rescue a relative. It's kind of old. It's from back in the 80s. Smoke Signals is a movie that's from the 90s, but it's about a pair of Washington Indians from the Colville Reservation coming down to this reservation and trying to find one of their fathers has died, and they're coming down to claim his body, as it seems. Really kind of an odd movie. Anyway, they find themselves on the trip. It's a bus trip from Washington State to Arizona. Anyway, they come down to this reservation. Skins is an American Indian adult battled greed and displacement in Sioux country. So we have one about, I don't know where Powwow Highway is. It looks like Arizona, doesn't it? I've never seen this movie.
Arizona, I went to New Mexico.
In New Mexico? Okay. And this is about, whoops, I'm sorry. This is about Washington. And this one's about Sioux country. And Sioux country is in South Dakota and North Dakota. South Dakota and North Dakota, hey. Anyway, there you go. How much time do we have? 9:54. Okay. Anyway, a bunch of movies, lots of movies to watch. There are new movies out that deal with different areas and different groups of individuals. You don't have to stay current, but it's really kind of interesting to see how Hollywood depicts these individuals. How accurate is it? It really doesn't matter. It just gives you an idea of what is going on in these communities. And maybe, potentially, the individual that wrote it has no clue. They've never really been there. I was watching a movie Sunday night about, what was it about? It was about an Indian who goes to a school that was built for Indians, and he's the only Indian there. I know. What school was built for Indians, but Indians never attended that school? Do we know of any school like that? Do we?
Could it be university?
I'm sorry?
Could it be university?
Which university? There is a school back east that was built for American Indians. And 11 American Indians graduated from that school. And it was built in like the 1790s. But only 11 Indians have ever graduated from that school. And it's in the Ivy League. This is the bizarre part. It's in the Ivy League.
Is it Dartmouth?
Dartmouth, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So here they made this movie about Lombardy, which is Lombardy is a tree from Lombardy is a section of Italy. Anyway, so the school's name is Lombardy, and their mascot is the Indian, of course, but no Indians go there. And this one guy comes from Oklahoma. His name is George Blacktop. And so he calls himself George Black at the school. And they pick on him. They harass him in the movie. It's really kind of horrible. Of course, he's not played by an Indian. He's played by this guy from New York City. It's really scary. I mean, the racism in the movie is horrible. Of course, it was made in the 1930s when racism was very common in the United States, and Hollywood wasn't doing anything about it. They were making movies, and they were making movies that people could identify with. And most people were racist in the United States, so most of the movies they made were racist, as odd as that may seem. Anyway, so it turns out that this guy is a Jim Thorpe. He's a Jim Thorpe type character, so he joins the football team and he kicks all the white guys' asses and becomes the star of the team. He's faster than everybody else. He's stronger than everybody else. And of course, that is the symbol that they're trying to show. I don't know if he was smarter than anybody else, but he's richer than everybody else because he's from Oklahoma. And in the 1920s and 1930s, they discovered oil in Oklahoma, and it turned out to be on some of the Indian land. So there were various tribes that were all millionaires. Are there millionaire Indian tribes in the United States now? And not the Navajo. I'm sorry?
California. Is that one of them?
Seminoles? I don't think they're quite, there's a lot of those.
California?
California tribes, some of those little California tribes
That own the casinos.
that own casinos. There's another tribe of Sioux up in Dakota Sioux, up in Minneapolis. They own a casino, and every member of the tribe is a millionaire. So it's one of the reasons why a lot of tribes are building casinos, because potentially if you're close enough to a large metropolitan area, you can get a lot of people coming in and gambling, especially if there's a bit of a payoff. And this has been one of the complaints of the other casino owners in the United States. The Indian casinos pay off better. They pay out better because they can, and they don't have the overhead that these other casinos. That's one of the reasons why Donald Trump tried to sue the Indians, because they were making too much money. They were paying too much money out, so he sued them. As interesting as that is.
Instead of including us into the taxing.
Anyway, But back in the 1920s and 1930s, they discovered oil in Oklahoma. They discovered lots of oil in Oklahoma, especially in northern Oklahoma, and there were select tribes that made lots and lots of money. They got ripped off by a lot of different people. There was murder on the reservation. It wasn't Indians murdering other Indians. It was white guys coming onto the reservation and murdering them, stealing their money. People marrying onto the reservation just to get the oil rights. It was just a horrible, horrible situation. Anyway, this guy had oil money, and he was making $10,000 a day from his oil. And the Rich brothers were in the movie, and they steal all of his money. Well, he doesn't want anybody to know that he's rich, so he gives all of his money to the Rich brothers, and they buy all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's really ridiculous, and it's an ugly, ugly movie. In essence, it's supposed to be a comedy.
I thought it was just a book.
I'm sorry?
I know there was a book on it. Something was-
There is, yeah. My wife has that book, and I'm going to have her bring it down. She's coming down next week, so I'm going to have her bring down that book so I can read it. I can't remember the tribe. Can you remember the tribe?
I don't remember.
It's not the Caddo. So it's a northern Oklahoma tribe.
And it was,
I'm sorry?
I don't remember.
I can't remember.
But yeah, I know there's a book about it.
It's horrible. I mean, murder, rape, marrying into the family, and then stealing all their stuff. It's just god awful. Anyway,
It's nothing new.
I'm sorry?
It's nothing new.
Nothing new?
Yeah.
Well,
It's always been like
I
that.
don't know. You got to have money to steal money, I guess. And this group of guys had lots and lots of money. So Hollywood just made fun of them over and over and over again. Them driving, not Mercedes-Benz, but Bentleys and whatnot. And living in a teepee, stupid stuff like that. So they made fun of these people. Anyway, so let's start chapter 6. Do I have time? Yeah, I got time. Chapter 6 is about basic interpersonal skills. Okay. Core interpersonal skills, as we learned previously, a good counselor displays warmth, of course. They are empathic, but not sympathetic and not pitying. They respect their clients. This is the basic problem. We have a lot of counselors that want to become counselors because they want to help other individuals, but they get people that are poorer than they are, and they don't really respect them. They don't really like those people. This is what happened in the South in the before civil rights. All the counselors were white. A lot of their clients were black, and they didn't really like black people, so they didn't really respect them. So they did a half-assed job of trying to help them and trying to take care of them. And it may have happened on the reservation as well. You have individuals who are not native, and therefore they don't really respect the people that they're dealing with. Genuineness, of course, is the last core interpersonal skill. Additionally, a good professional must accurately observe, effectively attend, and actively listen to the individual that they are trying to counsel. You need to look at them, look and see who they are. Watch their facial expressions. So you need to accurately observe them. You need to listen to what they have to say, hear what they have to say, respond to what they have to say, and of course you have to actively listen. In other words, you have to actively listen means that you repeat back the emotions that you're hearing. So you're not only understanding what they're talking about, but you're also reflecting it back to them. Observing means noticing all behaviors that accompany communication. This type of communication is known as nonverbal communication. Some psychologists will tell you that 90% of communication is nonverbal. Oh, wait a minute, if that's true, what does that do for all this internet stuff? Where people just email or Twitter, tweet. Where people communicate just by writing stuff down and sending stuff out. I'm not talking about Skyping. I have a former student that is having problems And last Friday, I had to communicate with him. He wanted to Skype, and I can't figure out how Skyping works. I've done it before, but I can't figure it out. Or maybe I just don't want to do it. But he wants to look at my face the whole time that I'm talking to him. I mean, like I'm going to say something different if you can see my face. But the reality is, of course, nonverbal communication is very important. So what does that do to all of these romances that are starting online? Where people don't actually see each other, but they communicate a lot.
Cameras on.
Is it real? I mean, if 90% of all communication is nonverbal, and you're not making any nonverbal communication with this select individual, it's possible that you're somebody totally different, right? And that actually does happen, I guess. We haven't figured out what the tribe is yet.
I think it's Osage.
Osage. The Osage, okay. Right, I'm there from northern Oklahoma. Yeah, okay. Osage, thank you. Thank you. It was driving me crazy because I knew it started with a vowel, but I couldn't think of who it was. Thank you very much. Osage. Yeah, they discovered oil on their land. They used to own a big chunk of Oklahoma. They don't anymore. They took away it was tribal lands actually. It wasn't a reservation. And they discovered oil on their tribal lands. And they discovered this great big pool of oil. And they just kept pumping oil out by the barrel load every day. And they were making just tons and tons of money. And then they started getting ripped off by all the jolly white guys. Facial expressions, okay, so how do we non-verbally communicate? We look at the facial expressions, breathing patterns, like if they're sighing, or if they're breathing deeply, trying to control themselves. This is something that you need to watch. You need to watch the type of gestures that the select individual makes. What kind of movement? Are they agitated? Are they moving a lot? Are they not moving at all? What is their posture? How are they holding themselves? That will tell you what they're feeling. Being a good observer increases understanding of what clients are communicating. It can supplement what your client is telling you verbally. This happened to me the other day. I was talking to a select individual, and they were saying one thing, but their face was telling me something totally different. So which was true? What they were telling me or what their face was saying? Which one was true? It's what their face was saying, right? They were saying one thing. They were saying what they thought I wanted them to say, but actually their face was telling me the very opposite. Being a good observer, I did what their face was saying. It may verify what is being said, or it may contradict it, and of course in this case it contradicted what they were actually saying. If a practitioner gets conflicting messages, the nonverbal meaning is usually closer to the actual meaning. Practitioners often comment on contradictions, and of course if you're talking to somebody and they look one way and they are talking a different way, then you need to mention that. Why are you saying this if your body is saying something totally different? Your mouth can lie, but your body can't. Well, if you're a good liar, then your body can, but only if you're a really good liar. Who are the best liars? People with antisocial personality disorder, number one. Number two, alcoholics, best liars in the world. They are so good at it. Good observers pay special attention to facial expressions. Facial expressions can show any emotion. As we're going to find out in cultural psychology, when you take cultural psychology, or if you've already taken cultural psychology, the Japanese talk to you with their eyes, and people in the United States talk to you with their mouths. Wait a minute. So their facial expression, the most important facial expression in the United States is the mouth. In Japan, it's the eyes. So their eyes are very expressive. So if you're in Japan and you're talking to somebody that's Japanese, their mouth will be fairly neutral, but their eyes will show the emotions that they're feeling, as odd as that may seem. In the United States, it's the very opposite. We don't talk with our eyes. but we talk with our mouths. So we smile a lot, we frown a lot, we purse our lips a lot. That's what happens in the United States. The interesting thing is that if you look at Japanese cartoons, a lot of their cartoons, the individual doesn't even have a mouth. If you look at anime just barely has a mouth at all. I mean, it's usually just a line across this portion of their bodies, but they have these huge eyes. So if you look at Japanese cartoons, they have big eyes and hardly any mouths. If we look at American cartoons, like Family Guy or, I don't know, American Dad, any of these strange cartoons, they usually have tiny little squinty eyes and they have great big mouths. And that's because in the United States, we talk with our mouths, they talk with their eyes. But if we're looking at facial expressions, of course, it will show the emotion that the individual is feeling. If the client shows no emotion, known as a flat affect, it may indicate depression. Now this is really, really important. Sadness is one thing, and the facial expressions for sadness is one thing. But if this individual is suffering from depression, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a flat, expressionless face. No emotion whatsoever. Well, there is emotion. There's depression. But it's not very expressive. It's flat. However, if the person is just sad, we're going to see other reactions. Other indicators of depression include little body movement and slumped posture. This indicates depression. Mere sadness, on the other hand, is much more animated. The individual may be crying. People that are depressed rarely cry. They may be sighing, trying to give you that information that they're sad. They may look down, whereas the person who is depressed isn't looking anywhere. They've got the 1,000-mile stare, the 1,000 feet stare, whatever you call it. Increasing amount of fluid in the eyes, of course, to the point of crying. So they will have tears in their eyes. A lot of times the tears won't come out of their eyes. So if somebody is merely sad, you're going to see all of these expressions. And that's not depression. If you're really depressed, you can't do that. You can't cry. You don't sigh because you can't even breathe in deeply. You just don't have the energy to do it.
I don't think you would even know until afterwards, too.
You mean?
Like a person that's depressed, would they know they were depressed until after the fact that
Yeah, it's a good
they
point.
don't know.
That's a good
Yeah.
point. They've moved from sadness to depression and they don't even recognize it.
Until after they've come out of it a little
Exactly.
bit and they're like, whoa, I was depressed.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
That's a good point. Stress is expressed by muscle tension, movement, shallow breathing. Looking away may indicate thinking, remembering, hesitant about that they are hesitant about talking. So that has to do with stress. You can see it in their face. A lot of muscle tension, especially in their face. Some people will make fists. They will stretch a little bit. They'll stretch because their bodies are so tense. They need to stretch out those muscles, and that has to do with stress. Clenched fists must be interpreted by the context of the situation and may indicate stress, may indicate frustration, it may indicate anger, and this is what you need to look for, and it may indicate anxiety. Okay, so clenched fists have a lot of different answers as to what's going on, so you have to read the situation that is taking place. Some people, if they have anger issues, they will go from one emotion to anger in a nanosecond. And these are the individuals you have to be careful of because they may strike out at you. So they may try to injure you because they're so angry. And a lot of times they go from one emotion to anger, and usually that's the way it works. Whatever emotion they have, they will jump into anger, and then they have anger issues. This is the individual that you never know when they're going to strike out. So they may go from happy to angry in a nanosecond. They may go from frustrated to angry very rapidly. And these are the individuals that you need to be careful of. The ones that have anger issues. The counselor must remember that gestures are culturally developed, and this is something else that you need to understand. So if you're dealing with somebody from India, If you're dealing, especially if they're a Hindu, a lot of times their religion teaches them not to be angry. So this individual, of course, is going to try to control themselves. And if they do have an anger issue, it is acultural. It goes against their culture. What about white people? Do they get angry a lot? Do they show their anger? Do they shoot a lot of people? They found another border patrol guy that was a serial killer. I know, he's 35 years old. That's not funny. He's killing people on the border. He's killing women, shooting them in the head. It's a little odd. But he had this lady at his house, and he had this problem. He had anger issues. And they were talking about something. They were talking about the serial killer. And she said, well, I think he's sexually frustrated or something. She insulted this serial killer. It turned out to be him, so he got pissed. And he grabbed a gun and tried to shoot her in the head like he does. He has to shoot him in the head. Evidently that has something to do with his serial killing. And she escaped, and she told the cops, and of course they went and arrested him. But he's a 35-year-old border patrol guy. I know, he just kind of, and he's killed 4 people in 12 days or something. I know, what's going on here? But you'll be happy to learn it's not a white guy this time. I know, you guys were all upset about white people shooting people. This is a Hispanic gentleman. His name is Ortiz, is his last name. So I'm guessing he's Hispanic. I'm guessing he's this. Anyway, so he's the one that's doing the killing this time, not a white guy. 35 years old. But 35 years old fits the pattern of serial killers, doesn't it? Normally it's during that era, that time frame when they are sexually active, potentially sexually active. As they get older, of course, their testosterone decreases and they are less dangerous. But as we saw with the shooter in Las Vegas, 64 years old, and he's blasting away on on 10,000 people. When someone experiences strong emotions, their skin tone may change color, darkening, or looking rosier than usual. This isn't just white people that turn colors. Everybody has emotions, everybody's skin changes. So if you've been around a lot of African Americans, no matter how dark they are, their skin tone will change. Things will change. Even if they're really, really dark, they're not really, really dark in their fingernails. They're not really, really dark inside their mouths, inside their lips. I had a good friend who was African American, and he was sick, and I knew he was sick because he turned pale. And you're thinking, wait a minute, this guy's skin was as black as that computer. And you're right, it was as black as that computer. But when he was, normally he had a glow to him. And when he was sick, he didn't. So his skin tone actually changed. I mean, it's fairly obvious when the person is pale as death. If they're blue, they're so white they're blue. It's fairly obvious, but everybody has a skin tone. And everybody's skin tone may potentially change if there is a problem. Okay? And if you don't think so, then you need to be around people and watch them with their skin, when they get embarrassed. I mean, it does change. It really will change, no matter what their skin tone is, no matter whether it's brown or yellow or black or white or blue, for that matter. Things will change. So you need to be around this person enough so that you can recognize what pale looks like. Okay? If you think that just because somebody's black, you can't tell what their emotions are by their skin tone, then you haven't been around enough African Americans to understand what's going on. Do African Americans sunburn?
Yes.
Yes, they do. Of course they do. Not as readily as as redheaded, blue-skinned white people, but yeah, they do sunburn. So everybody has a skin tone, and that skin tone can change. Skin tone change usually starts at the chest, it moves up the face, which is always kind of fun to watch. Once upon a time, I had a girlfriend. I know, I had a girlfriend. That's, ha ha ha, you had a girlfriend. Anyway, she had one brown eye, one blue eye. It was the oddest thing in the world. One eye was one color, one eye was another color. But when she got excited or angry, especially when she got angry, her eyes would change color. And you could watch it marching across her eyes. And it got really scary because they would turn kind of gray. I mean, it was really kind of bizarre. Anyway, that was my ex-girlfriend. Karen Racket. That's her name. Karen Racket. She was from Rhode Island. She had the worst accent in the world. It was horrible. So I can't even do it. But she was from Rhode Island. She had just the nastiest accent, and she had a voice that would go through concrete. I mean, we were in a bunker one time, and she was outside. They had the door closed. It was a steel door, and we could hear her on the other side of the wall. Her voice, because it penetrated cement. What was that? Can you imagine being married to somebody whose voice could penetrate cement? God, it's a good thing I didn't marry her. She's a cute little thing, but her voice, my God, it was just horrible. Why don't we stop right here? We'll pick this up next time. I won't talk about any of my old girlfriends again, I promise.